ESPN senior writer, author, Belichick, the making of the greatest football coach of all time. He's Ian O'Connor, and he joins us now. And good morning, Ian. How are you?
Hi, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. What kind of feedback have you gotten from the New England area on the book?
Zero. Zero from the Patriots. From the New England area, a lot of people read the excerpts on ESPN.com, and obviously when you excerpt a book, some of the edgier, juicier nuggets are pulled out, and maybe something gets lost in translation as it relates to the core purpose of the book. So it's focused on the Brady-Belichick relationship, an anonymous assistant's quote about Brady and the idea that the system could elevate the top 15 quarterbacks in the league. And really, it's a 455-page, 213,000-word examination of Bill's life. And I think until people actually read the book, they won't really understand maybe the true spirit of it. So I hope that does happen, obviously, and thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Did you get any cooperation from Belichick or get close to any cooperation?
No, absolutely not. And I signed up for that. I kind of knew, Dan, going in that probably would happen and tried to pitch around it as best I could. That's why I talked to 350 people. And he did ask some people not to speak with me, which is his right. He certainly doesn't owe me anything. And it was a little disappointing, but again, he has every right to do that. And so, no, I did sit down with his chief of staff up there, Bears Nigerian. We had lunch, and I explained why I was doing the project, and I wanted to get in front of Bill to at least explain the hows and whys, and that didn't happen. I did ultimately, at the end of the process, contact Bill directly via email and said, as I'm winding this down and speaking to hundreds of people, and my only agenda is trying to get this right, I'd love to get in front of you. And he did respond to that very cordially. It was brief, painfully brief, but he just said, thanks for the invitation, but I'm very busy, and I think I'll take a pass. So that's where we are. But I think I still painted a full human portrait of the man, and I guess ultimately the reader will be the judge of that.
If you had one question that you knew he was going to answer, what would it be?
The first thing, that's a very good question. The first thing that popped into my mind when you asked that was Spygate. Because as I looked at it and I dug into that case and found some new details about it, I really don't think, and I don't know if I thought this in 2007 when the case broke, I don't think it was really that big of an advantage. So if Eric Mangini got word to you, and Mangini, of course, was the head coach of the Jets at the time, that don't do this in our house or we're going to have to act, and he did it anyway, I'm just surprised that he would do it because the risk was too great. They got caught. It changed the way America outside of New England anyway looked at his program and his dynasty, and I just don't think there was enough of an advantage there to take that risk when you knew ahead of time that the Jets were going to pounce if you did it. So I just would like to ask that question, like, you're so good at what you do. Your team, that was the best team you ever had, even though they didn't win the championship, but they were 18-0. Why did you take that risk? I just didn't understand that. So that's the first question that popped in my head when you asked that, and I think I would love to hear his answer to that because I really don't believe in retrospect, and I've asked a lot of people around the league, I've gotten all kinds of opinions on that they needed to do that, and that it gave them that big of an advantage.
Also, you have situations, controversies that will have a team unravel. You got a team in Pittsburgh, it feels like, that they unravel when there's ever controversy. Did you have anybody tell you that this almost emboldened them? It brought them closer together, that they realized the Patriots at an early age in this dynasty, it's us against the world here. And I don't know if Belichick played to that or Brady played to that and made it even bigger.
Well, I think that in the locker room, the players felt that. They wanted to prove to the world that you are now questioning our authenticity and everything that we've ever done here. And we were going to prove to you that it's not about that at all. And they did. They won after Spygate broke. They won 17 straight games, and they should have won the Super Bowl, and they had 17 things in that game work against them. But that is the best football team I've ever seen, and it's ironic. That's one team that didn't win a title, and Bills had 5 of those championship teams. But after Deflategate, there's no question that they were inspired to win it all, and they did. And then Brady, when he came back after the suspension, I talked to a couple of his close friends, including Aaron Shea, his former teammate at Michigan. He said on the record, he goes, Tom is really angry about this, and they've ticked him off to the nth degree. and he's going to come back even better. And I know Belichick has shot down the notion that any of his players, including Brady, could be elevated any higher or inspired any more than they already were. But Brady's a human being, and I do think that took him to a new level. And the one thing about Bill, with those two cases, you can see he's a great crisis manager. And I don't think he gets enough credit for that. Even last year, you had his friendship with the president, then you had protesting players on the other side. He managed that. That was a very delicate situation for him. And there was almost this unspoken agreement between Belichick and his players. I'm going to give you the freedom to express yourselves and how you feel about these social issues, but understand that this is not going to ruin our season and divide our team. And it didn't. They got to the Super Bowl, and then obviously they lost.
He's Ian O'Connor, ESPN senior writer. Author of the book is Belichick, The Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time. I love the book. I did have a problem with that title of The Greatest Football Coach of All Time. I don't know if Belichick is. I think Paul Brown's the greatest football coach of all time because what he was and I know it's generational here, but Belichick is great. We know that. I just thought Paul Brown, I still look at as somebody who was unique, who changed the game.
Well, let me give you're right about that. He's the greatest innovator, certainly, of all time. He's the founding father of everything in the modern NFL, right? But let me say this. If you look, Dan, at his final 15 years of coaching, he did not win one postseason game. Now, they weren't playing as many postseason games. There weren't as many teams in the playoffs. I understand that. But if you really look at he had some lean years in there towards the end. And, Belichick obviously had lean years in Cleveland and his first year in New England. But that's a long stretch, 15 years, without winning one postseason game to finish your career. So Vince Lombardi, to me, is the ultimate standard that I think Belichick surpassed. I went to the high school where Vince Lombardi coached. And so to get over that hump for me personally, where all the priests and nuns at my high school would be really mad at me for saying that to me was the standard. And I do think Belichick surpassed that.
All right, a couple of things, because you do talk about some things that I have had strong opinions on. The Belichick love affair with Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that there was a tug of war there, that Belichick wanted to keep him and would have been fine if Tom walked. The relationship between Brady and Mr. Kraft after Deflategate, and wait, where are you? Do you have my back? That Belichick was suspicious of Brady with Deflategate. Like, there's just so much there, and it's still amazing that they kept it as much as they could in-house and still survived and thrived at that. I mean, all of those stories are amazing.
I think you're right. And I know you're a big basketball guy, and your professional relationship you had with Michael Jordan. The Jordan Bulls, I mean, Jordan and Phil Jackson, as you know, they couldn't stand Jerry Krause, and he put the whole thing together. They weren't even speaking most of the time, and yet they won 6 championships. The Steinbrenner Yankees had all kinds of internal conflict and turmoil, and they won. So it's not the first time we've seen that. They have done a masterful job behind the scenes of keeping it all behind closed doors until last year, where you had some very good Boston reporters report on the escalating tension between Brady and Belichick. A lot of it centered around Garoppolo and Alex Guerrero. Seth Wickersham of ESPN with his great piece. And it's the first time. It's amazing it took 18 years for it to come into public view. And I guess it's a testament to them and their ability to keep things sealed off. But the relationship survived, barely, because Tom, and I report this in the book, late March was still thinking of walking away rather than playing for his head coach again. And I think they're okay now. I think it's a functioning relationship. I do think they have one more ring left in them. It might not be this year, but I think they're okay. It's always been a transactional relationship, and that's what it is right now.
But you bring me to another point with their relationship. I honestly thought if the Patriots won the Super Bowl against the Eagles, that Brady would have walked away. That I think it's just, I don't love this because I have to deal with this with him. And Brady loves to practice. He's a gym rat, like the whole thing. And I don't know if you felt that or you got any indication that, you know what, if we win, I can just walk away. Giselle is, said it publicly that she's worried about me and my health and my kids. And I just thought Brady would have walked away if he won the Super Bowl.
Well, I'll say this, Dan. The Super Bowl week, I spoke to a close friend of Brady's who said that Brady had told him fairly recently, winning 3 out of 4 twice, which is something obviously nobody's ever done, would be a great way to walk away. And he meant it. So it's possible he would have done that. On the other hand, I talked to Brady on the phone for about 50 or 55 minutes in the spring of 2017, and we were talking about him playing at age 46 and 47, never mind 45. So my feeling is that at least after the Garoppolo trade, it took walking away really off the board. I mean, how would the fan base have reacted if he inspired them to trade Garoppolo, his successor, and then he walked away? That would have been he would have been the bad guy in that drama.
Yeah, but he'd also be able to stick it to Belichick a little bit. But because once again, and I don't know how petty it gets, but Ian, I still go back to you gift wrap Garoppolo to the Niners for a second round pick. And it just felt like this is Garoppolo. And do you think that Brady played a role in saying it's either me or him as we move forward?
I don't think he ever said that. I don't think he would ever say that. I don't think Robert Kraft ever said the words, "You have to trade Jimmy G." I think Robert Kraft made it very clear to Belichick that Tom Brady is going to retire a New England Patriot, whether that's 45, 44, 47. He's not going anywhere. So Belichick walked away believing that he had to make that move. Now, why a second-round pick? Why not hold an NFC-only auction for Garoppolo, which made the most sense? Get him out of the conference, but then somebody's going to give me a first-round pick for him. I think he wanted to place him with an offensive coach he respected. I think he really likes him personally, Garoppolo. He wanted the kid to succeed. And also it would be good for his legacy, Belichick's, if he did win a championship or two in San Francisco with an offensive coach he believed in. So I think all those things came into play, and that's why the trade happened the way it did.
Does Belichick care if he's liked? Not respected, but liked?
No, not publicly, because he plays that character that you see every day at the podium, and that's not who he is. I've talked to many of his friends. A lot of them didn't want to be named in the book, but who wished that he showed some humanity at the podium because they see it all the time. And so that's not who he is. So I don't think he cares about his image. You saw the clip the other night walking into Detroit, into the building. Two little kids hold out their hands, and he walked right by them. When he's working, he's at work. Don't do that. Do not stick. Now, they're kids, so they don't know. But don't stick your hand out. I mean, this is the same guy who has walked past Robert Kraft in the hallway at Patriot Place and doesn't say hi. and sometimes doesn't even say a word to the man paying him millions and millions of dollars. But he does that to everybody. So it's just who he is at work. It's not who he is away from the facility.
Who is history kinder to? You call Belichick the greatest football coach of all time, and maybe you believe Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. But history is kinder to which legacy here?
That's a good question. I think Brady's the greatest football player of all time. Jim Brown, my father would kill me for saying that, but Jim Brown, he started making movies at age 30. So Belichick is the one who created the culture there, and I think ultimately if McDaniels takes over afterward and carries it on and finds another quarterback and wins more with that system, I think maybe Belichick because of what he created around Brady. And Brady himself has told me that he believes I asked him, are you ready to, this is in the spring of 17, are you ready to concede that you are greater than your idol, Joe Montana, and you are the best quarterback of all time? He said, no, because I believe I'm a product of the system, the people who have coached me and I've played with, and I think a lot of quarterbacks in my shoes would have accomplished similar things. I don't know if that was just humility or he believed that to a certain degree, which I think he did. But I think if I had to give the edge to one or the other, legacy-wise, I would go with Belichick. But again, I'm pushing a book about Belichick, so I'm probably the wrong guy to ask that question to right now.
Do you think Brady feels like, if you could get them both to answer this, Brady feels like he made Belichick, or Belichick feels like he made Brady?
I really believe this, that they understand they couldn't have done it without the other. I think Brady understands Belichick was worth one extra ring to him, and I think Belichick believes Brady was worth one extra to him. In other words, you give Belichick a very good quarterback who's proven he could win 2, I think Bill would win 3 with that player. Same thing with Brady and the coach. So I think that's a pretty even deal there.
Okay.
I really do think that they're worth, with somebody who's proven to be very good, one extra title. And I don't know if that's how they look at it, but that's how I look at it anyway.
I'll leave you with this question. The answer that you got about Belichick, where you went, oh my gosh, that's gold.
About Belichick.
Or just the story itself.
Well, to me, the most profound story in the book is the first one I told about his father. His father was in the U.S. Navy serving during World War II, and he was on Okinawa. He was the only a black officer walked in, Samuel Barnes. He was one of the first black officers in the United States Navy. Every white officer in the club walked out except one, Steve Belichick. And he befriended the man, and Barnes's family, the Belichick name means a great deal to them for that reason. They were roommates for a short period of time. And I think that really shaped Bill. I think he grew up in a household that was way ahead of its time in race relations in this country. And that's a credit to his father, his mother. And I think that's why when people wonder, how does Bill really inspire or connect with the African-American athlete? I think it's because of his father and mother and the way he was raised in that home. And that's one of the reasons why I really opened the book with that anecdote.
Congrats on the book. Good luck with it. And great to talk to you again, Ian. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
That's Ian O'Connor, ESPN senior writer. The book is Belichick, the Making of the Greatest Football Coach of All Time.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.